Hey, I'm James Burnham. Today, we're going to talk about adaptability to change. Change is good. Being able to show that you are open to change and adaptability is important in many areas of life. And here's how you can demonstrate it. First, you got to learn to meet change with curiosity. Too often, I see and hear people, when met with something that is different, out of sorts, not something they're used to, say, "What? What are you doing? Huh? That's not how we do it," right? That's the response. It's an immediate defensiveness. A barrier comes up instead of saying, "Oh, that's interesting." I'm from Canada. I remember when I first started coming down to the US as a kid and I would say things the way Canadians say them, I'd often hear people say, "Huh? That's not how you say it." And that would make me feel weird. I'd be like, "Yeah, it is." Because I grew up differently and I was met with a person that had not, like me, young kid, not heard a different way. And their response to me was not curious, it was reprimanding. And so I would think, "You're an idiot," right? That's what I would think. And maybe that's what that person was thinking about me. What I quickly learned after traveling a little bit and having experiences was that that's just a natural reaction to something that is different. We are geared this way, right? But if we can actually meet it, when you go to a place and you hear somebody speak and somebody says a word that is different, you can say, "I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said." And you can hear, and then you can say, "Oh, that's a different pronunciation than I use. I say it this way." That's all it needs to be, right? But that simple curiosity, that simple interchange actually creates a bond with the person who is acting differently than it does when you say, "Huh?" right? So that's a very simple example of language. But when we meet change in business, we meet change in our personal lives, we can respond much more aggressively, even though we may not verbalize it. We can respond within ourselves with deep defensiveness to change. Get curious. Allow yourself to meet whatever it is that's different without defensiveness and get curious. Second, stay calm when things don't go your way. Often change is maybe a structure change that takes away what you perceive as your power or takes away something that you feel like is valuable because you're familiar with this. You know how to make this work, and this change is going to make you have to relearn and grow and do things differently, and you're comfortable. Change challenges your comfort. But did you know our value for comfort is way, way too high? We place way too much value on that. And so when we feel like our comfort is being threatened, we lose our calm, we lose our cool. Don't lose your cool with the change. Change is actually the constant that you need to learn to be adaptable to. Having something stay the status quo, that's an impossibility. Quit thinking that that's the way. Learn to say to yourself, life is about change. Growth is the sign that happens to me. The pain that I feel when I'm facing change is the sign of growth. That's what it is, right? So calm yourself down. Meet this with curiosity and calm to know, yeah, this is the nature of life. 3, be flexible on how you achieve an outcome. Too often, we want something to happen and we have painted a picture in our minds of exactly how it will happen. And you may get that outcome from somebody, but maybe they didn't do it exactly as you wish they had. And that becomes a real issue. What this was really about is learning to attach your importance, the things that you value, to the actual values. What is the final thing that you truly love and wish to be, not the way that you get to that thing. I see all the time people, when they're facing change, sticking to the systems that they love and are familiar with and trying to go to a new place using the exact same system and valuing a system over the actual values that they perceive or the outcome that they wish to have. I see this in politics all the time, right? I am not very political. I don't consider myself anything in the political spectrum. I don't like to label myself at all. What I see is problems that are happening in our space and people failing to fix them. And the arguments that I hear are all around how we are trying to fulfill the same values. Almost all of us want to take care of our neighbor. Almost all of us want good things to happen to those around us. They want to live in a good economy. They want to have nice things in their lives. They don't want to be hurting, right? These are things that we can all agree on, most of us, I guess. I shouldn't say all. However, rather than saying that's what I value, we say, well, this is how we're going to do it. And if you try to change the way I'm going to get this thing to happen so that everyone's safe and good and happy, then I'm going to attack you. We don't care about how it's done. We want to get it done. That's what we should be doing. This happens in all kinds of ways because the action, the routine that we do in order to fulfill what it is we want becomes the thing that we attach to, not the final solution. You know, Christ was asked by some Pharisees who had all kinds of systems in place to measure worthiness and goodness, right? He was asked, what are the most important commandments of God? And he responded, the first is to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, might, mind, and strength. And the second is like unto it, to love thy neighbor as thyself. Upon these commandments hang all the commandments of God, right? So he took all of their little systems and he said, bleh, they're crap. They mean nothing. What I value is that you love God, love your neighbor, and love yourself in equal measure. That's what he's saying. And that is a hard thing for many people to accept because they are deeply invested in the systems that they use to represent values, not actually the values, and the systems don't matter. However you get to that, right? And that is a tricky thing for a lot of us to hold on to. So these are things that you can do to become more adaptable. Really evaluate, am I in love with a value or am I in love with a system? And then shed that, and you can be flexible in how you achieve an outcome. So I want to tell you a story of how I have seen this play out in business through COVID, because it has been more evident now than at any other time. I was doing an evaluation of a company that was really struggling financially with the changes that had occurred with COVID. And in that process, all of the C-suite executives were honestly in a panic because they were hemorrhaging and losing business everywhere. How do we do this? So I interviewed each of them individually. I ended up interviewing about 15 or 20 people. I did some more than just the executives to find out what was going on and what they saw, and asking questions about what they perceived were the problems, what they thought were the solutions. And you know what was interesting is privately, each of them had almost identical ideas of how to proceed and what they needed to accomplish and what they needed to do. And these were brave ideas, and they were cutting edge, and they wanted to pursue these things because they knew they had to change to meet the change in the market. But then when they got in a room together to discuss how they were going to proceed, no one had the courage to suggest a change in the way they do business because it would be so dramatic. The change in their focus on how they would actually proceed and gain the financial freedom that they wanted through business, right? So, in a situation where I interviewed each of them individually and they were all full of bravery and willingness to do some really crazy adaptations that would dramatically change the way they did business within their world, in front of each other, none of them was willing to be brave. None of them was willing to step out and say, you know what? These systems aren't working anymore. We value these things. We need to represent our values in another way. They stayed silent, and they did not change. And they continued on doing the very same things they had already done, waiting for the world to come back. Now, these guys have not gone out of business, but they have not thrived, and they have hemorrhaged with employees leaving the company. They have had infighting. They have had all kinds of things happen because they have refused to adapt to the new situation. And this comes from fear. So when we're feeling fearful, when we're scared, rather than hide from it and cling to what we know, sometimes it's important to take a look at what is going on and let go of what we know and leap for what we hope. It is a terrifying thing. It's what we call faith for those of us that are religious, or what we call hope, or whatever it is. But you don't know if you're going to land safely. You might fail, but you're guaranteed to fail if you cling to the space that is no longer a viable option over stepping in a new place with the same values but a new system. I don't know if this is something that you struggle with, but I know that a lot of people, when faced with fear that can hit us when we face change, struggle to adapt. This is because when we're in a space of fear, we shut down our prefrontal cortex, we move into fight or flight, and we are no longer using our higher function of our brain to make the choices we need to make in difficult circumstances. Get out of the fear, let it go, get out of the systems, analyze what it is that's holding you back, and you can meet change and adapt to a future with grace that will inspire the people around you to be brave like you. Stick around, I got another story coming up on how we can face the future without fear. I'm James Burnham. Thanks for joining me.